What's going on, fellas? Welcome back to Del Tales, man. When it comes to the NFL playoffs, we're only 2 weeks away from that taking off. And it's not really about who the best team is anymore, man. It's about who will end up being the hot team, who can carry the momentum. For example, the New York Giants 2 years in a row, even when they beat the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, the New York Giants was the last team in the NFC to actually make it. They were the 7th seed in each one of those seasons. So this one is really more about who can be the hot team, who can be hot at the right time, play great football, and carry the momentum, and so no one can stop you. So let's kick right into Week 17 rundown. Here we go. All right, let's get it kick-started with the Chiefs and the Steelers. So for the Steelers, look, guys, it's just time to be honest with ourselves. It's time to move on from Russell Wilson at this point. It's just time to be honest about that. No one is saying Russell Wilson sucks or he's not a good player or anything like that. I do think he's a good player. Do I think he's one of the 32 starters in the league right now? That part I don't fully agree with. I think if he was a backup, he'd be the best backup in the NFL. Sadly, I don't think he can win the big games that are needed to be won, especially when it comes to the playoffs, but I guess we'll find that out very soon, in a couple weeks. He had a streak, but so did Justin Fields, and I just think it's Justin Fields' time to shine. When it came to the tougher games like the Ravens in the second game, Chiefs, the Eagles, and hopefully the second time around with the Bengals, Russell Wilson did not show up, and these are the types of teams that he may have to deal with in the playoffs. Obviously not the Eagles because they're an NFC team. That would have to be the Super Bowl, but in general, you got to be able to win these big games. And I know they beat the Ravens the first time around, but the second time around, they got dominated. Okay, and Russell Wilson did not play his best, and he was reminded that he's no longer 25 years old. But what do we know about Russell Wilson is that he's not the future of the Steelers right now. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. They're wasting some serious talent on the bench. Somebody by the name of Justin Fields, they got to get him up and ready to go. And sadly, we have to wait until the playoffs are over for the Steelers to recognize this. For me personally, I hope for the Steelers fan base that they do win at least one playoff game. But man, they are not beating teams like the Bills, or the Chiefs, or the Ravens, and maybe even the Texans in the playoffs. But the Texans have kind of been hit or miss this season, and then with the injuries that they have, especially with Tank Dell, it's kind of a different team. For the Chiefs, this might be another run to the Super Bowl. Honestly, I have them against the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl right now, to be honest. I don't see it any other way. The challenges are there. The challenges that I think will be the toughest for them, for the Chiefs specifically, will be the Bills who beat them, which could have the home field advantage in the head-to-head, and then the weather can play a big role in that thing. The Broncos, who, the Chiefs needed a field goal block to beat them in the end. And even the Texans, who actually almost won that game, but ended up losing it because Tank Dell got hurt. And in that injury, the whole course of the game changed. I mean, C.J. Stroud was even in tears for that one. So, everything about that game will be changed. But this is more than likely to be a Super Bowl team. I just think I will be shocked. Maybe everybody will be shocked if they don't end up in the Super Bowl. Let's just be honest with ourselves. Ravens, Texans. This is kind of what I mean by the Texans are kind of hit or miss this year. You never really know what you're going to get at all. They are losing games that they should be able to win easily, but they always find a way to lose some of these really close games. Sometimes it's for the same arguments that I have said earlier in the seasons. Plays are taking far too long to develop. They're getting to C.J. Stroud far too much. He's getting sacked, he's getting touched, and he has to think about that. The penalties are stacking up against them, especially on offense. Them losing Aziz Al-Shaair on defense for 3 games does not help. That only makes it worse. So they're having a hard time taking advantage of some of the opportunities that they have on the field. Even with turnovers, they cannot turn them into points right now with the offense. For the Ravens, man, on the other hand, they fully took advantage of all the shortcomings for the Texans on this one. And this will help boost their preparation for the playoffs. They, for some reason, run into the Texans. They will also have the home field advantage with this win, which is actually kind of nice for them, as they might run into the Texans again. And don't get me wrong, the Texans can still beat them, so they still got to play a full game. But this last game here ended up as 31-2 on Christmas Day. You know, it's just that simple, man. It just was not a good day for the Texans, but that'll come back around. Seahawks and Bears. Now, this is one of those games where it's either you hate it or you love it. And a lot of people are going to hate it for some reason. You know, I never got that. I personally was one of those that loved it. Two defenses showed up on both teams. Both teams just shut down the offenses of the opponent. This was definitely a chess match just based on efficiency, you know. Even though the Bears actually had the ball for more time of possession, they actually lost all three phases of the game, you know. Only passing for 76 yards all game, rushing for 103 yards, less efficiency on third down. They had less first downs while allowing 7 sacks to take place and a pick. That's a great formula to lose a tough game. You know, this is kind of what I mean by efficiency. So this was one of those games that you got with only 3 field goals scored the entire game. It ended up being 6-3. You know, and people, like I said, they're going to hate this because they want to see high scores. I mean, even the NFL talks about this. You know, we have to be honest. They're like, hey, when viewers get to see more points on the scoreboard, they're more likely to watch and they're more likely to enjoy the game. But when you have two different defenses that just shut down the opponent's offense, it's the type of game you end up with. And to be honest, I loved every minute of it. Chargers, Patriots. Look, I'm not going to say too much about this one. Look, I'm a Patriots fan. I think you guys know that by now. My boys definitely got dominated in this one. It was not a good day at all. Drake May even had his worst day so far in the season, you know. And they only ended up with 11 first downs in this game versus 29 for the Chargers, you know. And let's not forget, third down was 2 out of 10, so 20%. You cannot win a football game like this when you can only convert 2 out of 10 third downs. You know, for the Chargers, this was a good practice for the playoffs, and really, that's it for this game. Man. If you did not watch this game, just trust me, you're not missing out on too much. Broncos and Bengals. Man, Joe Burrow, what a day. Throwing the ball 49 times in this one, completing 39 of them, 412 yards. He got 3 touchdowns out of it. Bo Nix, on the other hand, also played pretty well. Actually, ended up with 3 touchdowns and just 1 pick. And in all honesty, that was really the main difference in this game. That one interception kind of made all the difference and kind of just swung the momentum to Cincy. You know, it gave Cincinnati a chance not to lose a game at the end of the fourth quarter. That's something else that it did. You know, after Cincinnati gets the ball in overtime, they just run down the field and score a touchdown, you know, just to end this one. So, you know, it is what it is. For the Broncos, once again, they come really close to beating a good team, and they just crash out in the end. You know, however, the Broncos are a playoff team out of the AFC West. So I'm not exactly sure if they'll be able to get out of the first round, but you never know. You still got to play the game. You know, they definitely will have to do better in third down conversions versus only 33% against the Bengals. So that has to be improved. So that could be just an issue with play calling. And they will definitely have, you know, to get more than 19 first downs to win a first round playoff game, whether it's in the wild card or not. So they definitely got some serious preparation to do, but it's not impossible. You know, anything could happen in the first round for the Broncos. Like I said, they almost beat the Chiefs earlier in the season. You know, after next week, we'll know a lot more about who these teams will end up playing in the playoffs once the numbers finalize out, and we know who the top 7 teams are from the AFC and the NFC. And then we'll be able to have a full conversation about the playoffs from that point on. And the Bengals, however, on this one, they are eliminated. They're definitely not a playoff team at this point, so no need to worry about that one now. Cardinals versus Rams. You know, this is one of those games where the Rams have to make sure they can, you know, win it and still secure that top 3 spots in the playoffs. You know, you don't want to lose a game in your division and then it causes something to happen to get bumped out of that. But they are at the top of the NFC West, so win or lose, they would have stuck in that 3rd spot. But, you know, you kind of want to go in with some momentum into the playoffs because you're going to get a first round bye being in the top 4. So this was a good win for them. And actually, I'm just noticing that they will be the only team from the NFC West in the playoffs, actually, as the Seahawks have been eliminated from contention. So they are the only representative. You know, and the same thing goes for the Cardinals. They are eliminated from contention. They seem to find a way not to utilize all of their capabilities and the players that they actually have throughout the season. They eliminated themselves from the playoff race, to be completely honest, and I talked about this. When they won games, it was very predictable. We knew what they would do. When they lost games, once again, very predictable. We know what they're going to do, but more importantly, we know they're not going to use the weapons that they actually have. So we know what they're not going to do. And even in this game, the Cardinals just kind of beat themselves. They dominated in total yards, rushing yards, passing yards, and still lost the game 13-9. This is one of those games where if you watch it, it's kind of hard to explain to you why the Cardinals actually lost, but they're just not utilizing their best weapons. That's literally just it. Cowboys Eagles. This is exactly what was expected to happen in this game. So we know that the Cowboys are not what they should be without, their QB right now in Dak Prescott with his injury. We also know that the Eagles could not lose this game no matter what they did at all. They're just a much better team. They didn't even have to go all out. They kind of made it look effortless, to be honest with you. But that only speaks to how good they actually are to make it actually look easy. Because that's not easy to do. It's still the NFL. But if I were them, I'd probably be resting my starters for the last week. Now, that could be a gift and a curse, You lose that momentum, you lose that rhythm. You could go in, after your first bye week, you can go into the playoffs and not play your best game. You never know. But at the same time, you could allow the players to heal up and to play much better in that game, depending on what their preparation looks like. So, that's kind of a coaching call, but I would not want to risk injury to my starters, and we're going to be in the playoffs no matter what anyway. So there's really no reason to play them in the last week of the season, in week 18. Panthers Buccaneers. You know what? I've noticed something. Bryce Young is actually outplaying CJ Stroud since he's been back, which is actually kind of a crazy thing, but it's also true at the same time. I wondered if he would be able to come back this year, and I've said that multiple times earlier in the year, and kind of make a case for himself to remain with the Panthers. And I think he has done just that. I think he's done just enough to remain with the team. That does not mean they will not be looking for another quarterback in this case, however, but he's definitely in a much safer place before he was benched. Carson Palmer, not Carson Palmer, what am I saying? Andy Dalton. His injury definitely helped out Bryce Young, giving him a chance to come back, at least showing that he's learning something while he's not a starter and he's improving over time. So I think that looked really good for him. And I think coach is definitely starting to have a lot more trust in him, Now, for the Buccaneers, this was definitely good prep for the playoffs for them also, but not going to lie, this is not one of their best showings, Playoff teams do have to play better, and the Buccaneers are kind of this roller coaster of really, they're worse than the Texans to me, if you ask me. You just, once again, you don't know what you're going to get. They are a team that can beat just about anyone in the NFL on any given week. They just don't show up, And sometimes it could be quarterback play, it could be the receivers, it could be the play calling. You just don't know what you're going to get. So it could be from players all the way down to coaching. So we're going to have to let them decide what they want to be in the playoffs, but hopefully they come out all on the same page. Because once the playoffs hit, it's simply win or go home. That's it. Jets versus the Bills. Let me ask y'all a question. Are you really shocked as to what happened in this one? I don't think anyone is shocked. I think we all knew that something like this is exactly what would be happening. The only thing I think we all want to know is who will be the quarterback after this season for the Jets. I can't wait for the draft to find out who they draft, and maybe can they compete? Can they come into the team and compete with Aaron Rodgers right away? Are they going to keep their word to Aaron Rodgers and keep him the starter and allow him to develop another player behind him? I don't know. Will Aaron Rodgers even develop another player behind him? That's up to him. I don't really know. Because you have to realize what you're asking Aaron Rodgers to do is, hey, teach this guy how to play the game, but he's taking your job. It's not quite easy to do that. As for the Bills, I'm not sure. They may run into the Kansas City Chiefs, or they may have to deal with the Ravens. I think the Ravens is an easier game than the Kansas City Chiefs, of course. Or even the team that beat them earlier in the season, being the Texans. And of course, I would, of course I would be in the second round and beyond because they get the first round bye. But the playoffs on the AFC side will not be easy. So the Bills just got to come ready and just know it's going to be tough. And I hope no snowstorm comes in or something like that during one of their home playoff games, making it harder for them to play even in their own turf. Colts Giants. Man, we all know the AFC South is a little bit bad this year. And clearly the best teams in the AFC South is the Houston Texans, without a doubt. The Colts went back to Joe Flacco this time around. He actually played pretty well, throwing for 330 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he did have 2 picks along with that. Jonathan Taylor also rushed for 125 yards. He had the ball 32 times. Man, they're definitely feeding him the ball. But all of this is simply not enough because Drew Lock on the other side threw 4 touchdowns, completing 17 passes, ran for over 300 yards. And he's trying to show the Giants fan base that, they should not lose all hope. But clearly, they are 3-13. They're rebuilding. I don't think they'll have the number 1 pick now with this victory. So, yes, they're in rebuilding mode, but they're not the worst team in the NFL. And over the next few years, if they build up correctly, they can definitely get this thing turned back around. Now, I'm still definitely shocked that they let go of Saquon Barkley. For me, that doesn't make any sense, but I guess you got to do what you got to do. Packers Vikings. Definitely the toughest division in the NFC this year. The NFC North, man. The Packers, Vikings, and Lions had to deal with each other. The Lions came out on top, but the Packers and the Vikings were fighting for that second spot. And actually, the Vikings get a chance to play the Lions next week. And the winner of that will be the top seed of the NFC West. The NFC North. So, for the Vikings, they had to come out and win this game. For the Packers, whether they lost it or not, they were still going to be in the playoffs. Well, in this case, any team who lost it would be in the playoffs, but the Vikings now have a chance to play for that first round bye. But, when it comes down to this for both teams, I think I still have the Lions selected as my team coming out for the NFC to go to the playoffs. To the Super Bowl. But one of these teams might be able to beat the Lions, man, in a surprise. And I don't know who it's going to be. It might be the Vikings or something like that. But these 3 teams, 2 of them are definitely going to bump horses again. They're going to bump heads again. And someone's going to have to come out on top. So we'll see exactly what happens after next week, and we'll kind of make a decision on how that NFC North will play out. Next up, we got the Falcons and the Commanders. Someone please explain to me why or how did the training staff or the entire coaching staff not pick Michael Penix Jr. as the starter over Kirk Cousins? Is it simply because they paid Kirk Cousins $130 million and they did not want that money to go to waste? Because they literally threw away the season and then brought in Penix to see what he could do. And in all honesty, he's playing much better than Kirk Cousins ever did this season. Penix, he's coming in, man. He's throwing dimes on every play. He's putting the ball on a frozen rope, even on deep coverages. Keeping his team in the game. The offense loves playing behind him, man. They're willing to take risks with him. The coaches already trust him. They're giving him some of the tougher plays to actually run the offense and just trusting him to be himself, and he's showing up. This was a struggle when they had Kirk Cousins as a starter. The team could not function the way that they wanted to the entire time, especially not the way that they're functioning right now. And they struggled to put together an entire season that was enough to put them in the playoffs, especially in that NFC South, which was fairly weak. They could have been the second team to come out of it, but it was too little too late before they brought in Penix. And Penix was ready to go the entire time is what it seems like. So you guys see this guy is with your scout offense throughout the entire season. In practice, maybe they did not give him enough reps. Yet you still decide to go with Kirk Cousins, maybe because of the experience or because of the money or something like that. But I just don't. I really don't. That's just not enough of a reason. Let the best guy play, give you the best chance to do what you have to do and be successful in your own season. When you have a better player, just use him. What's the problem? It was your fault for giving another player too much money, and now you're tied up in it. You make a better decision next time. And the front office is going to have to figure that out. But this game was definitely a battle that needed overtime to finish out. It was actually crazy good. The Falcons was actually behind for the most part in the game, but it was able to tie it 24-24 in the fourth quarter. and then to go to overtime. And then, of course, the Commanders run down the field, kill the clock, and score a touchdown, and that's how the game ends. But now, the Falcons' chances of making the playoffs are very slim. By the way, we can pretty much say they're eliminated. It's now like 23%, and had they won this game, it would have been like 79%, almost guaranteeing them a spot in. But they look a lot better as a team. It was a hard-fought battle, and they lost it in the end. Now they have a lot of things to look forward to next season. But I definitely think that they have their quarterback in Penix. Maybe they can go find him a backup, or just keep Kirk Cousins there since, well, you paid them all that money. Lions, 49ers. Man, I'm very glad we had a game like this happen for the Lions, because this gave them some great preparation for the playoffs, which is what I noticed. These teams in the playoffs will turn it up a notch, and I've been saying this, and they definitely will play on another level. And that NFC is a pretty tough division right now. The entire conference is pretty tough. So you never know, who you might have to play, how you might have to play. Might you be behind in a game in the playoffs, or you have to catch up? Because that's exactly what happened to the Lions today. They had to make up the missing points and then win the game in the end. But their defense hanged in there. They still have some injuries. Aiden Hutchinson is still not fully back. And the Lions had to do what they had to do to run away with the game in the fourth quarter and to force a victory here, especially after that interception. So now next week they can focus on playing the Vikings. And the reason why you got to play your starters in this one is the winner of that game becomes the top seed in the NFC North, which is the top seed in the NFC period for the season. So that gets you the first round bye. You can get some of those injuries back, and I think that would actually be a help for the Lions. For the 49ers, they better open up that checkbook, man. Brock Purdy, it's time to get him paid. And at this point of football, if you are a fan of certain teams, especially if your team is out of the playoffs, like the 49ers, you're just watching because you want to see something. You want to watch football. And, once football is over, which is very soon, we're not going to have it for a while. I understand you, and I'm right there with you. But keep supporting your teams, even though they're not in the playoffs. And just enjoy football while it's here, man, because there's not much time left. For those teams that are ready for the playoffs, man, get ready for some tough games, because there's always two stories at the end of every weekend, the good ones and then the bad ones. So that time is coming up, and do or die season is coming up. That's what I call the playoffs. So we'll enjoy some football here. Thank you very much for your time today, guys. Definitely like and subscribe, and we will have much more coming for you. Have a good one.